All right. I'd like to have everyone's attention, please. We'll have an opportunity to finish up this, the end of this lab on Thursday, I think. But I did want to say a few words as to what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it. So first of all, why are we learning how to use the terminal when you could just be running NetBeans? And there are two answers to that. One is that once you know what you're doing, is you can use the terminal to do the same thing over and over again very quickly. Whereas in NetBeans, you would have to do a lot of point and clicking. So for example, if you're a grader and you have to grade 90 homework assignments, just imagine what it would be like to go into NetBeans, start a new project, put in the files of the first person, compile them, start a new project, do the same thing for the second person, and do that 95 times. You would die the death of 1,000 mouse clicks. And so with the terminal, you can automate something like that. So that's one reason why professional programmers use the terminal. The second one is, and it's a more mundane reason, suppose that something goes wrong with NetBeans. Then what can you do? You can take a screenshot of what goes wrong with it, that hopefully shows some of its unhappiness, and post it on a forum. But then what? Then someone else is going to look at that screenshot, is going to say, that looks like one unhappy NetBeans, and is going to move on to the rest of their life, because there's nothing they can do. The error was very likely caused by one of the 5 million settings that are in those various NetBeans dialogues. You've seen some of those dialogues. It's a little-known fact that there are more ways of configuring NetBeans than there are stars in the universe. And so no one is even going to try to find out what was wrong with your thing. On the other hand, if you use the command line and some error shows up, the way that the error is worded usually gives a pretty good indication to someone who knows what they're doing as to what the cause of the problem was. To the degree that what I can often do when I do have some obscure problem, that I can just paste the error message into Google, and one of the first 100 hits or so is going to have, well, either a whole bunch of other people who share my pain, or hopefully someone who can point me to a solution. But it's usually a very effective way of taking an error message, posting it into Google, and getting something out of it. And that is because the error message contains a lot of information. You can't paste the screenshot of your ailing and sick NetBeans into Google, because it's a picture. The error message is a text, and so text is always better. So for those two reasons, I really do want you to learn the terminal. Every productive professional programmer uses the terminal some of their time, and usually you use both. You use the powerful tools like NetBeans when you want to explore, you want to create something new. Then NetBeans is the right environment. If on the other end you need to repetitively do the same testing process, then NetBeans is probably the wrong environment. If you need to bootstrap a new environment, something that works both here and on the other side of the globe, and things are not working out, it usually helps a great deal if the teams on both sides figure out whether they can get going with the command line, and once they have synchronized that, then they start using the graphical tools. So it's really useful to know these tools, and I want you to know it. Why doesn't everyone learn these things? Because it involves pain. The first 2 weeks of using the command line are a pain for everyone, because the error messages are so cryptic, you don't know what the keyboard shortcuts are, and particularly on Windows, that the Windows is just not all that well suited for running a command line. So trust me, after a few weeks, these things become second nature. Even on Windows, you'll be having a happy life on the command line. It's possible to configure it. It just takes a few extra steps. That will be going. So by the end of the semester, everyone should be able to whip up the kind of stuff that the command line is good at on the command line. And I do realize that until then, it does give a certain amount of frustration, but one just has to go through it. All right, the other thing is, and this is only going to be of interest for those of you who are using Windows, there's a number of extra challenges that you don't have on the Mac and on Linux, and we need to kind of fix them over time. Number one, I've seen a bunch of people when they typed Java-version, now that the version number they got was 1.6, And then when they tried to run their program, which was compiled in NetBeans, which used 1.7, they got a incompatible class file version error. And the only way to overcome that is to start with the correct version of Java. So somehow on their machine, these unfortunate people have 2 versions of Java, or 3, or 4, or even more. And one of them happened to be the one that got picked. In that case, one has to be careful and pick the right one. So you have to type something like C:, what is it, SIG drive. I'm simulating on here, of course, I don't have any of these things. Program files, Java, JDK 1.7.0._02 bin Java. And then everything will work fine. Now I realize that that is super annoying. And there is a way of overcoming that. And in the next couple of labs or so, we will do that. If you put a question on Piazza, I will give you a sneak preview on how you can remove that pain point. So definitely, if you're sick of that. Now, normally you should be able to copy and paste. So like here, I can copy this thing here. And then if I need it again, I can just paste it in. On Windows, that is unreasonably difficult unless you use RxVT. So I've given all of you instructions on how to install RxVT. And about half of you did it and you were successful with it. And the other half, for some reason, the Cygwin installer must have multiple versions in it, or something's gone wrong on some of your machines, and I'll try to fix that. So wait for instructions. And there's also some of you who, even though you claim to have installed RxVT, you didn't, because when I try to run it by just typing RxVT, then, well, here it gives me an error message in French. You would have gotten an error message that says it's not installed. So we'll need to overcome those RxVT issues on every machine so that you can copy and paste. It is really important to be able to copy and paste. The third thing that makes life miserable is the class path. So when you type java-class path, and now a whole bunch of people very reasonably said, okay, SIG drive, C, users, Fred, documents, lab 2, class, what was it? Build classes, and what was the name of the class? Whatever it was, I'll just say main right now. And then it didn't work. And the reason is you have to look carefully at what goes on here. So the program that's being launched is Java. All of this stuff here comes into Java, and Java gets this as arg0. No, sorry, arg0. No, it gets this one as arg0, the dash class path. args1, and so on. Just like every other program, Java gets whatever you type as command line arguments. So now the Java program, written by the finest engineers at Oracle Corporation, now look at what is arg0. Let's say it's dash class path. And then they look at args1, and then they say, well, that must be the path that leads me to this file. They know that this particular version of Java runs on Windows, so they assume that the path afterwards comes as a Windows path. And Java is a Windows program, and it consumes Windows paths. Unlike, for example, LS, which is a Cygwin program, and it consumes Cygwin paths. So you always need to figure out whether the thing here is a Windows program or a Cygwin program. You only need to do this on Windows. On every other platform, everything is uniform. So the remedy then is to switch to a Windows path here. And as it turns out, you can use /. Okay, unhappy fact number 97. If you really do need to get through program files, what is it? SIG drive, C program, okay. What's going to happen when the shell sees this. The shell goes through this and it says, okay, the very first thing is a command. So what is the very first thing? Oh, it's sigdrive C program. And it's going to say, I can't find that command. So notice that program files has a space in the name of the directory. No right-thinking person ever should have a space in the names of any directories. It is hostile. It means you hate your users. And actually, Windows has learned something. That it used to be that to get you to your, what now is /user/your name, it used to be documents and settings with 2 spaces in it. Because they hate their users even more. They did in Windows XP. And they learned. They learned. After only 15 years in the business, they learned. They can learn. They changed documents and settings to users. My grandchildren will live to see the day when program files is renamed to programs. Right now it is still program files with a space. And so you have to deal with a stupid space, and the way to deal with it is just like what you do whenever you have one of those troublesome characters in Java, you put a backslash in front of it. And it really has to be backslash. And this will work. All right. Very last thing, and then I'll let you go. And again, it's only on Windows. So on Windows, now you have 2 homes. You have /home/u. That's the Cygwin home, also known as the good home. And you have sigdrive C users U. That's the Windows home, of which nothing good can be said. So what you should do, starting from the next lab on, you should say, there's no benefit in using the Windows home for your computer science work. None. Just say no to users U and put everything into home U, into the Cygwin home, except, of course, that when you have a Windows program, you have to know that it's C:\Cygwin. Home U. You just have to know that that's how Windows calls it. But from now on, whenever you install something, just always put it into your Cygwin home. There's nothing to be lost. It's easy to find in both Windows and in Cygwin. And then when you run stuff from the shell, then you have it easily available. You can leave your stamp collection in the Windows home and your music and whatever, the stuff that's not computer science, but the computer science stuff, there's nothing to be gained by putting it into like downloads or any of those things. Just reflexively move it into the Cygwin home and you'll be so much happier. All right, that's all that I've got. And finally, remember, it is your choice of operating system. No one forces you to run Windows on your laptop. All right.